Pleased to welcome in our guest, WWE Hall-of-Famer, John Layfield. You know him as JBL, Bradshaw, Hawk. He's been a lot of different names throughout his career, but he's John Layfield now and doing a heck of a job as a commentator on WWE, as well as obviously having a storied wrestling career. JBL, welcome. Welcome to the show, man. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great, guys. I live up in Bethesda, Maryland now, so I'm surrounded by these evil Washington Redskins fans. So it's great to talk to somebody from back home.
Well, I appreciate you giving us a little bit of time, and we're happy to inject a little bit of Southern charm back into this thing for you, since you've been around up there with the Yankees for too long. Let's start though with the name, because this is one of the interesting aspects of wrestling to me. Is so many guys wrestle under so many different names. A lot of times it's not their own. You're lucky in that, John Layfield, that's your name, so at least you get to have close to your name. You've been under Bradshaw, obviously, a lot. But what's that like when you're to me, it's like actors, you don't say to Tom Hanks, "Hey, Forrest Gump." You say, "Hey, Tom Hanks." Whereas people will say to you or to other folks you're wrestling under different names, they'll call them by that name. Is that odd to answer to a name that's totally different than your own?
Not really, no, because wrestlers always call themselves by their stage names, whatever that is. And those change from territory to territory. And the reason, or at least back in the day, it did. And the reason is simple. Vince McMahon doesn't want to build the name and then lose that name to go to WWE. Do is he'd bring in a name, he'd bring in a talent, change the person's name, trademark that name. That way, when you left WWE, because back then guys would come and go all the time, you couldn't take the name with you. And wrestlers would always call each other by their stage names, so we never made a mistake on television by calling the person by their real name. And it's just a way to kind of protect ourselves. So it wasn't that unusual, because I was always being called Bradshaw. So to me, it's just kind of an extra name I have.
Now, that's something that I find interesting. Y'all in the back, back in the back, you would call each other by your stage names.
Yeah, always. You see guys every once in a while, make a mistake and call somebody by their real name. You don't want to do that, man. It's not like we're trying to fool anybody, but it's, J.R. Ewing, you don't want to call this guy Paul Hagman because on television, people want to get into what you're selling to them. They want to suspend belief for a while and buy into the products. We would always call each other by Undertaker's was a groomsman of my wedding. And to this day, I don't know if I've ever called him by his real name. I always call him Taker. So it's just a matter of practice, so you never make a mistake on television.
That's very interesting. That's something I didn't know. I like new information. All right, so tell me about how you get into wrestling. You played at Abilene Christian. I do games for Northwestern State down in Natchitoches, now a Southland Conference rival of ACU. But tell me about the transition. You played a little professional football. You kind of got in there. How did you end up wanting to go into the wrestling field?
I played football. I was hoping to play football a long time. And by the way, I called J.R. Ewing Paul Hagman. It's Larry Hagman.
There you go.
I'm a Dallas fan. It's where I stole the character from, so I don't want people to assault me on Twitter and say, "Do you even know who you stole the character from?"
Yeah.
Of course I do. I stole it from J.R. Ewing, and Ted DiBiase was who I stole the JBL character from.
Beautiful.
But, I wanted to play. I grew up in West Texas, Sweetwater, Texas. And I had two goals in life. I wanted to play football, and I wanted to be a wrestler. But I was hoping I would play football long enough that would be my career. I didn't play that long. Played about 3 years professional. I had a ton of injuries, mainly my left leg. They wouldn't pass me on the physical the fourth year, and so that's when I got into wrestling. I'd met a person who had wrestled in Japan. I went up and trained with Brad Ryan, who was the 1980 Greco-Roman world champion. He would have been the gold medalist, but that was the year that U.S. boycotted because of the Olympics were in Russia. And because of Brad's name, he was such a well-respected trainer. He trained Brock Lesnar. He trained Big Van Vader. He trained a lot of the stars that are out there today. I got jobs at a lot of places. I got a job in Texas, got a job in Japan, got a job in Europe. I lived in Europe for 2 years. And then 1995, WWE called, and I went there for a tryout match, and I've been there ever since.
That's John Layfield, JBL, joining us on the Patrick Netherton show. All right, so you get into it, and kind of reading your bio, it's pretty commonplace. You start sort of in the independents. You were in Japan a little bit. You were overseas. You get a break with the WWE, and that's kind of where everyone tried to get to. you eventually get there, and you kind of move through various characters as you go along. What's that process like as you're, in the beginning, trying to develop a character that's going to stick, that's going to be memorable, that fans are going to like, that Vince is going to like, because he's obviously the first guy you've got to win over. And then as you go through these transitional periods where your character changes a little bit, or you change the aspects of it, what's that like dealing with that on a week by week, month by month basis?
Incredibly frustrating. By the time you get to WWE, or back then WCW or NWA, even run under Jim Crockett out on the East Coast, you generally had made it somewhere in a territory. You'd been a champion somewhere. It's much like making it into pro sports on the level now. You've generally been the best at your high school, the best at your college, and now you're going into the big waters. But you've at least had some success. So I'd had a lot of success in smaller territories. So I thought I was ready. And I remember WrestleMania, I think it was 13, could have been 12. It was the one in Anaheim Pond where Shawn Michaels wrestled Bret Hart at the 60-man Iron Man match. And I remember watching Shawn Michaels, the Heartbreak Kid, rappel down from the ceiling in that shiny costume he had. And I thought, I don't belong here. I belong a lot of places. I'm not good enough to be here. I just thought, you know what, I'm going to be here a couple of years, and I'm going to end up my career in Japan. I was overwhelmed by the situation. I thought I was ready. In hindsight, I wasn't. And it takes a while to learn the system. It is a complete different animal. And fortunately, I had some time. I had some guys who believed in me, and I hung around through several different character iterations. And then I got a huge break with the JBL character, which kind of came out of the blue when I thought really my career was over.
You had a great run with Ron Simmons, the protection agency, the APA, all of that stuff as Bradshaw, and I'm curious, when you're with one person as a tag team, or you're in a group, that kind of thing, what's that dynamic like? Because is this something that you and Ron cook up in the back, going, okay, we need something to come together? Is it, hey, somebody else says you were going to put you two guys together? What's that like when you're coming up with a character or a group, something like that you want to put together with another person, and then you have to basically be with that person all the time?
Yeah, with Ron and I, a lot of guys were put together, and some guys didn't like each other. Animal and Hawk and the Road Warriors notoriously did not like each other.
Mm-hmm.
They're the greatest tag team of all time. And they really just didn't get along. They were a great tag team, both individual great people, but they didn't really like each other. Ron and I were best friends. Ron was the best man at my wedding. Ron's been my best friend. He said many times I was like the brother he never had, and I feel the same way about him. We just kind of hit it off very well together. We rode together. We always went to the bars together, and they put us together just because we were kind of together all the time anyway. It was something that we didn't pitch. They went to Ron and said, would you like to tag team partner of John? And he goes, yeah, I'd love to. And for me, being the younger, they didn't ask me, but I'm thrilled. I was really thrilled there with Ron. I think so much of his football career, first black heavyweight champion in wrestling history. It was a dream come true. And Vince McMahon saw us one time on my birthday in Baltimore, Maryland. We're sitting there joking, having a few beers, and Vince came to me the next day. I want to put that on TV. And I said, put what on TV? He goes, you and Ron sitting around drinking, just being guys. He said, that was entertaining. He said, I'm going to call it the APA. And I said, you got to be kidding me. I went and told Ron, and when I told Ron said, with that James Earl Jones voice, he goes, now let me get this right. We're going to drink beer on TV. And I said, yes. And he goes, greatest idea I've ever heard.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's also, by the way, my producer's dream job. Drinking beer on television actually he drinks beer on radio most of the time, so he's already living his dream life. Talking to JBL, WWE Hall-of-Famer. Speaking of the Hall of Fame, you're inducted this year in an event that basically doesn't happen because of all the coronavirus stuff. What are you? Are you in limbo? Are you doing it next year? What is this? Where are you right now in terms of the Hall of Fame?
This has been a running joke among my friends. I go in the Hall of Fame and the world ends.
I love it.
I don't know what's going to happen. They're technically calling me Hall of Fame elect. I think they're doing it just as a...
Oh, did we lose him?
I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know when we're going to be allowed to have mass gatherings again. The Hall of Fame is always sold out, whatever arena the holds, around 10,000 people. So I was excited to give my speech and be out there. Ron Simmons was going to be the person that inducted me. And now I have no idea. I have no idea what's going to happen with the entire Hall of Fame ceremony, where it's going to be or anything.
It's funny because we had Anthony Munoz on when he was getting elected to the NFL Hall of Fame, the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and I asked him the same question. Are you a Hall of Famer when they say we've elected you to the Hall of Fame, or are you a Hall of Famer after the ceremony? I think I need somebody to give me somebody's got to help me out here, John. I need some clarification on if once they announce you're a Hall of Famer, aren't you a Hall of Famer even if the ceremony never happens?
As a person who has been elected to the Hall of Fame and has not had a ceremony, I go with that.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I love it.
I don't know. I think they're going to put some type of caveat on it there just because they're going to make sure and they have some big ceremony eventually down the road. But I think I'm officially a Hall of Famer. But I tell you this, even be mentioned in the same 30 minutes as Anthony Munoz, that was my idol. Oh. I saw him one time at Doral after he quit playing. It was like a Catholic Pope. That guy was the best ever.
Yeah, no doubt about it. We're talking to JBL from WWE. He is a Hall of Famer in our books anyway. They've already said he is, so even without the ceremony, you're in. Let's talk about the response of WWE to all of this that's going on. You got to take part. You were on the commentary desk for one of the weirdest events there has been, WrestleMania with no fans. We've seen, obviously, shows continuing to go on without fans. Tell me about what you think of the WWE's response to this and how they've gone about trying to do business in a business that is very, very fan reliant.
Yeah, I reached out to WWE just recently and told them I was very proud of what they were doing, and I am. Right after 9/11 on 9/13, it was a Thursday, the first live telecast of any mass gathering, and nobody knew what was going to happen. People were saying that we probably shouldn't do it. We thought it was the right thing to do for the country. I was part of the first group that went into Afghanistan as a civilian group with WWE. First group that went down to Ground Zero as part of WWE. We've done some things that I think were the right thing for the country. I don't want to make too much of the altruistic benefit of this. I'm not trying to make us into any type of saints, but in my opinion, this is the right thing to do. There's nothing but news, and most of the news is bad. It's all coronavirus. It's all about deaths, your potential reopening, a little bright light out there. But I love what WWE is doing by giving some type of original content. You may not like it. It may not be your cup of tea. But to me, I think it's a good thing that WWE is doing this. And I sent them an email just recently saying that I thought I was very proud of WWE for doing this. I know there are monetary reasons, and I'm not trying to make this into some altruistic, these guys belong on pedestals, but I think it's good what they're doing for our country.
Tell me about being on the announce desk for at the table for this. What was that like with nobody in the stands?
Horrible. Absolutely horrible. It's terrible because you lay out in certain moments. Like Vin Scully, I guess, who was called "Do You Believe in Miracles?" And the next thing he did was lay out and let the crowd respond.
Yeah.
You just pan the crowd. So many things you have to call and then lay out, and you let the crowd react. You let the crowd tell the story. There's no crowd. And so it felt really weird to be talking and seeing some big seminal moment in a match. And these guys are working their butts off in this ring. And you just keep talking. It's not natural for me to do that because I've realized so long about how you lay out and let the crowd tell the story. And since there's no crowd, you have to fill that void as a commentator. And it felt unnatural. It was weird. It was also hard work to realize, don't lay out, keep talking, even though that seems very unnatural.
Yeah, and the other thing is, and you can speak to this, I would imagine, pretty well, is there is a level of communication that goes on in the ring, as you're talking to each other, kind of talking about moves, fleshing things out. Because all the matches aren't completely scripted. There's, you kind of know what the big spots are, but there's a lot of stuff you have to fill in the middle. Give me some idea of what that's like for the wrestlers as they're going through, knowing that we can hear everything they're saying to each other, basically, because the arena is completely empty and quiet. What's the challenges there for the wrestlers themselves?
The challenge for the wrestlers there also is very much a positive. I watched Sami Zayn, who I think is just fantastic. He's just a whining, crying little baby you want to beat up. But that's what you want from a bad guy. And he was literally crying during part of the match. It was hilarious to watch. I thought it was so entertaining. And with a huge crowd, you wouldn't have gotten that. You wouldn't have been able to hear what he was saying. He was constantly talking to Daniel Bryan. It was some of the best banter I've seen. And so you got a real opportunity for guys that are in the ring also to be able to have some incredible banter that they wouldn't normally have for the guys that are very creative, which Sammy is certainly one of those.
Talking to John Layfield, you know him as JBL from WWE. All right, you transitioned out of full-time wrestling. You're doing a little bit of commentary with them, that kind of thing. But I want to talk. You mentioned the altruistic side of things. You're doing a lot of good work down in Bermuda. You kind of vacation there, and then it became a bit of a cause for you. Tell us about why you chose to live there. What's important about that, and the cause that you have going on down there.
Sure. I got hurt one year in WWE, and I was going to have a commentary job that was going to come up in about a year. I was living in New York. I didn't really enjoy living in New York at the time because I just kind of traveled in and out. New York is kind of fun to live there, but it's not the fun to travel in and out of. And so my wife told me, she said, why don't you go to Bermuda for the summer? We love it there. There's a little place for rent, and I'll come back and forth and see you. And when I was there, I saw the gang problems that they were having with territorial gangs, with drugs, with violence, and I wanted to do something to help those kids. And so I started up a sports program, a rugby program. Obviously, you can't play football because you need 11 players on each side. You need all the equipment. It's an expensive sport to play, especially for inner-city, low-income kids. Rugby's perfect. All you need is a ball. They still get to knock each other around, have some fun out there and play. And I started up this program. We had about projected, because the government budgets the numbers, as you can imagine governments tend to do, a 50% dropout rate among the males in low-income areas in Bermuda. And by the time I left, we had a 100% graduation rate out of all of our kids that were there. So we did a really good job, not because of what I did, but because it became a true island-wide initiative of some wonderful volunteers, some wonderful supporters trying to give these kids options, because when you're born into low-income areas, it's just bad luck, and you don't have the options that kids that are born into middle class and upper middle class have. And I've always felt that I want to do as much as possible to give these kids options.
John Layfield joining us. All right. Is it true that Grant Boon of Abilene Christian is the greatest broadcaster that you have ever worked with? That's a question from the text line that I was told to ask.
Not only the greatest that I've ever worked with, the greatest I've ever heard. I mean, you talk about Vince Scully, you talk about some of these incredible announcers, Al Michaels.
Yeah, Keith
Boone
Jackson.
Grant Boone is probably, Grant Boone is the greatest by far. I mean, Grant Boone is like first and second, and somebody like Al Michaels starts at third.
Yeah, Grant is a good
He's
friend.
He's also just a good human being and really smart.
Yeah, he's a good friend and a good friend of the show as well. Hey, by the way, what was that like? You did some football games a couple of years ago. Got to call some television, for color commentary. You also did some Abilene Christian radio games. What was that like going out of the, I guess, scripted world into the unscripted world of commentary?
I loved it. It was a lot of fun, and I got to do it with Grant, who's a good friend of mine, and he's really good at what he does. And it was so much fun to be able to sit there and call a game. And it's different from wrestling in the scripted world, because you want to be a step behind in the scripted world. You don't want to say, oh my goodness, who's that behind the curtain? Is that The Undertaker? You're giving away something that the crowd will enjoy finding out on their own. So you want to be a step behind in commentary in wrestling. You want to be a step ahead in football, which is pretty cool, because you say, well, the corner's rolled up, that frees up the MAC linebacker to blitz. You get to do some analysis like that, little future predictions. That's a lot of fun, because you can actually get a step ahead instead of a step behind. It was a different environment. I absolutely loved it. I love football, and it was so much fun. And I love my old college. It was so much fun to be able to call those games.
Yeah. And by the way, the new stadium at Abilene is beautiful. They did a remarkable job on that, no doubt. JBL, we got a question from a 10-year-old, Brody, who asked, in the I Quit match against John Cena, did Cena become the toughest competitor you'd faced to that point?
I wanted to do that match because I knew how tough John was. I knew how good John was. And, when we had WrestleMania 21, I wanted to make sure, because I knew my time was coming to an end, that I wanted to give him something worth beating. That's how you pass the torch. And he would have got it anyway. I'm proud that I was the guy that would end up being the mailman that delivered it to him. He would have been there no matter what. But I wanted to be able to show how, because I'd wrestled John on the house show circuit, the live event circuit, all over the country. I knew how good he was, and a lot of people didn't. And I wanted to show in that I Quit match that he could do the hardcore stuff. He could do the tough stuff. And he did. And I thought that really helped his career. At least I hope it did. It did at the time. And that, to me, was a real proud moment for me.
All right, final thing for me, Shreveport, where we do the show from, was a bastion of wrestling at one point. It was one of the most important cities in the formation of wrestling, Mid-South, all of that. Did you ever get down here to perform? Do you have any memories of Shreveport coming down here?
Yeah, I wrestled in Shreveport, Mid-South, never Bill Watts. I know the history of that territory very well. I got to be good friends with Michael P.S. Hayes, the Freebirds, and he was such a big star there, especially when he sold out down the Superdome with the Junkyard Dog. But no, I never did any huge matches. I was there for WWE. I was also there for some independent shows there in Shreveport. I always had a great time there, and that was for close to where I lived, because I lived at Athens, Texas, right by Tyler, for about 20 years. So that was the easy trip for me.
Yeah, it's a very easy trip. Man, thank you so much for your time, John. I really do appreciate it. Please stay safe out there. Continue the good work that you're doing down in Bermuda. And, hey, maybe when you actually get a ceremony to be officially inducted into the Hall of Fame, we'll have you back on.
I would love that. Then you could drop any adjectives or caveats on my name, Hall of Famer.
Exactly.
Patrick, it's great talking to you. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you, JBL. John Layfield joining us.